All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are diving deep into a topic a lot of you have been asking about, the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, this one's a big one.
It is. We all remember the headlines, the chaos at the Kabul airport, all that military equipment left behind, the tragic loss of American lives.
Yeah, it's hard to forget those images.
Absolutely. And it's left a lot of us wondering, was this just a series of blunders, or was there something more going on? Could this withdrawal have been, well, a deliberate setup?
Interesting question.
It is. And to help us unpack all of this, we've got an expert here, someone well-versed in geopolitics, military strategy, and even those conspiracy theories that are swirling around this event.
Well, you got to look at all the angles, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's only natural to want to make sense of something this big, this impactful.
Yeah, whenever something like this happens, something that seems to defy logic, people are going to look for explanations, for something beyond the official narrative.
Right. It's like we need to find a way to fit it into some kind of framework, even if that framework is, well, a little out there.
Makes sense. The human brain likes patterns, even when they might not be there.
Exactly. So let's dive into some of these patterns, these theories. What are some of the most prominent ones out there?
Well, one that's gained a lot of traction is the global reset theory.
The global reset. Okay, I've heard of this one. It's a little intense.
It is. It suggests that, and get this, the U.S. intentionally destabilized the region.
On purpose.
Yeah, the theory goes that they put the Taliban back in power as a way to distract Russia and China.
Whoa. Okay, so it's like a giant game of chess, and Afghanistan is the pawn being sacrificed.
That's one way to look at it. The idea is that by creating this crisis, this vacuum, the U.S. forces its adversaries to react, to divert their resources and attention.
And while they're busy dealing with that, the U.S. can focus on other areas, other objectives.
Exactly. Maybe it's about containing China's influence, maybe it's countering Russian aggression, who knows? The global reset theory is all about these big, sweeping moves on the geopolitical chessboard.
It's a pretty Machiavellian theory, isn't it? Like sacrificing one country to gain an advantage somewhere else.
It definitely raises some ethical questions, no doubt about that. But in terms of realpolitik, it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility.
So that's the global reset theory. What's the other big one you mentioned?
The other is the secret deal theory.
Okay, this one sounds intriguing. What's the secret deal?
Well, it claims that the U.S. didn't just leave all that military equipment behind for nothing. They traded it.
Traded it for what? I mean, we're talking billions of dollars worth of hardware here.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting. Some speculate it was a trade for rare earth minerals.
Rare earth minerals, those are crucial for technology, right? Aren't those in abundance in Afghanistan?
That's the thinking. Others say maybe the Taliban had some critical intelligence, information about terrorist networks or regional power dynamics that the U.S. deemed valuable.
So the U.S. is essentially cutting deals, making trades, even if it means potentially empowering the Taliban. It's risky, to say the least.
High risk, high reward, right? But there's another, even more out there aspect to this secret deal theory.
Oh, detailed.
Well, it ties into all those declassified Kennegon reports about UFOs.
Wait, are we going down the UFO rabbit hole here? You can't just drop that and not elaborate.
Okay. So online, people are connecting the dots, so to speak, between the withdrawal and the resurgence of UFO talk.
And the connection is?
That maybe, just maybe, the Taliban had something the U.S. really wanted, something related to extraterrestrial technology. It's a fringe idea, for sure, but it's out there.
All right, let's entertain this UFO idea for a second. Is there anything specific about how the withdrawal happened? Anything that might fuel these kind of speculations? I'm thinking specifically about Bagram Air Base, that major U.S. base that was just abandoned almost overnight.
Yeah, the circumstances surrounding Bagram are definitely strange. Such a strategically important base, gone just like that.
And weren't there reports, local reports, of strange lights in the area right before the base was abandoned?
There were. Whether those reports are credible, well, that's another matter. But they definitely add to the mystery, don't they?
They do. So we've got these two big theories, the global reset and the secret deal, both with some pretty wild implications. But is there any actual evidence to back them up?
Well, a lot of the evidence being presented is circumstantial. Like, for instance, the fact that the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, launched a probe into the withdrawal just this year.
So just a few months ago.
Yeah, in 2025. Some see that as a sign that he's trying to uncover some hidden truth, something that was swept under the rug.
But couldn't it just be that he's trying to cover his own tracks, make it look like he's taking action even though it's years after the fact?
That's possible, too. It all comes down to interpretation, doesn't it? Another thing that gets brought up a lot is how easily the Taliban seemed to take over. It's like they knew exactly where all the U.S. equipment was, how to operate it, almost like.
Like they had inside information.
Exactly.
But couldn't that also just be attributed to the Afghan army's, well, lack of motivation to fight? I mean, morale was reportedly pretty low.
Yeah, there are always alternative explanations. It's important to consider all sides.
And what about those stories floating around online, the ones about whistleblowers and alleged drone footage showing, well, things that can't be explained? How much weight should we give those?
The internet, as we know, could be a breeding ground for misinformation.
Right. It's tough to separate fact from fiction sometimes.
Exactly. While there's a lot of talk about leaked footage showing strange lights, unidentified objects, none of it has been verified. It's all very much in the realm of speculation.
So we've got some intriguing, but mostly circumstantial evidence for both the global reset and the secret deal theories. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Couldn't all of this simply be chalked up to good old-fashioned incompetence?
Oh, absolutely. Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is often the most likely.
Right. And government incompetence is, sadly, not exactly unheard of.
True, true. But the scale of the miscalculations here, the lack of foresight, it does make you wonder.
It does make you wonder if there was something more deliberate going on. So let's explore that possibility for a moment. If we entertain the idea that the withdrawal was staged, what would anyone stand to gain from orchestrating something like that?
Well, control, for one, maybe power projection, or maybe it's just a giant distraction.
Okay, let's break those down. What kind of control are we talking about here?
Maybe it's about controlling the narrative, shaping how the world perceives the U.S. Or maybe it's about manipulating global events, even if it means creating chaos in the short term.
Chaos that they can then exploit.
Potentially. It's about playing the long game.
And what about power projection? Wouldn't a botched withdrawal make the U.S. look weak, not powerful?
Well, sometimes projecting weakness can be a tactic in itself. You can make your adversaries underestimate you, make them overconfident, which you can then use to your advantage.
Ah, so it's like a feint in fencing. You pretend to be weak, then strike when your opponent least expects it.
Exactly. It's about deception, misdirection. And then there's the distraction aspect, something we touched upon earlier. Maybe the goal was to shift attention away from other things happening, either domestically or internationally, things that the powers that be didn't want us to focus on.
So some high-stakes games are potentially being played here, but what does all of this mean for the average person? Like, why should we care if some shadowy figures are manipulating global events?
Well, it raises some serious questions about trust, about who's really in control, about whether the information we're being fed is the whole truth. It shakes the foundation of how we understand the world, doesn't it?
It does. And what about the implications for national security? If this was a deliberate move to destabilize a region, that could backfire pretty badly.
It absolutely could. You create a vacuum, and who knows what will fill it.
It could lead to the rise of extremist groups, new conflicts, even more suffering.
All very real possibilities. And then there's the impact on public trust. If it turns out we've been misled, deceived, how can we believe anything we're told?
Right. It erodes faith in institutions, in leadership.
It makes people cynical, disillusioned.
And that's dangerous. It makes it easier to manipulate people, to control them if they don't trust anyone, if they feel like they have no power.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to think critically, to question the narratives we're presented with, to demand transparency from those in power.
So what you're saying is, don't just accept what you're told. Do your own research, come to your own conclusions.
Absolutely. Stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussion, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Okay, we've got a lot to think about here. We've explored the global reset theory, the secret deal theory, even dipped our toes into the UFO waters. We've considered the potential motives, the implications, the whole geopolitical chess game. But where do we go from here?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. We need to look beyond these individual theories and think about the bigger picture. What if the withdrawal wasn't the end game, but just the beginning of something much larger, something we haven't even begun to grasp yet?
Okay, now you've really got me hooked. We need to dive deeper into that. And that's exactly what we'll do in part 2 of this deep dive.
Buckle up.
Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. We're picking up right where we left off, digging deeper into these theories surrounding the 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah, things are about to get even more interesting.
They are. You know, in the last part, we talk about two main theories, the global reset and the secret deal.
Both suggesting that the withdrawal maybe wasn't just a big mistake, but a calculated move.
Right. And if that's the case, if this is all part of some bigger plan, well, it makes you wonder, what's next? What's the next stage in this grand scheme?
It's like trying to predict, I don't know, the next move in a really high-stakes poker game.
Exactly. So let's put on our, I guess, speculative hats for a minute and explore some of those potential next moves.
Right. So one scenario that's been floated out there is that this withdrawal was all about reshaping the geopolitical landscape.
Reshaping it how?
Well, the idea is that the U.S. created this vacuum intentionally, and now other players like Russia or China, they're going to rush in to fill it.
So it's like the U.S. is setting the stage for a new power struggle, a new conflict.
Possibly. And in that conflict, the U.S. sits back, watches its adversaries get bogged down, maybe even weaken each other.
It sounds, I don't know, a little too cold and calculated even for the world of geopolitics.
It's definitely a high-risk strategy, but, it wouldn't be the first time something like this has happened. Yeah. Think about the Cold War, right? The U.S. and the Soviet Union, they were constantly engaged in these proxy wars, supporting different sides in conflicts all over the globe.
Right, trying to gain an advantage without directly confronting each other.
Exactly. So in a way, you could see Afghanistan as a modern-day proxy conflict.
With the U.S. using the withdrawal to manipulate the balance of power.
Right. It's about creating instability, forcing reactions, and then capitalizing on the fallout.
It's a chilling thought that all of this is happening, that people's lives, the fate of a whole region, are being used as pawns in this global game.
It's definitely a sobering thought. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that this is the game being played. What does the U.S. get out of it? What's their end game?
Right, what's the prize?
Well, one possibility is the containment of China.
China.
Yeah, remember, Afghanistan shares a border with China.
Right, right.
And all this instability, all this chaos, it creates a major security headache for them.
So China has to divert resources, attention, to deal with this mess on their doorstep.
Exactly. And that, in turn, prevents them from focusing on other things, like expanding their influence in the South China Sea or, making moves on Taiwan.
Ah, so it's about keeping China off balance, keeping them preoccupied.
Right. Force them to fight fires on multiple fronts.
Okay, that's the China angle. What about Russia? They've got a long history in Afghanistan. They're not just going to sit back and watch all this unfold, are they?
You're absolutely right. Russia's a key player here, too. And the withdrawal, well, it could be seen as a way to test their resolve, see how far they're willing to go to protect their interests.
So the U.S. is poking the bear, so to speak.
In a way, yeah. And it could also be an attempt to drive a wedge between Russia and China. They both have their own ambitions in the region, their own goals.
So the U.S. is hoping they'll turn on each other, fighting over the spoils.
Potentially. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time countries have been pitted against each other.
No, it wouldn't. But all of this, it's incredibly risky. You're talking about creating a massive power vacuum, a vacuum that could easily be filled by something much worse.
Right, that's the danger here. It's like opening Pandora's box. You never know what's going to come out.
It could lead to the rise of new terrorist groups, more violence, more suffering for the Afghan people.
Exactly, and that's the tragedy of it all. Even if this is a calculated move, even if it's all part of some grand strategy, the human cost is immeasurable.
Yeah. It's a stark reminder that even when we're talking about these high-level geopolitical games, there are real people, real lives at stake.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've explored this scenario where the U.S. is intentionally creating chaos, stirring the pot to advance its own interests. But, there's another possibility we should consider, one that's a little more, out there.
Oh, let's hear it.
Remember all that talk about UFOs, the secret deal theory?
Right, right.
What if the withdrawal was somehow connected to all of that?
All right, now we're getting into some seriously speculative territory.
I know, but just hear me out. What if, hypothetically, the U.S. government has been in contact with extraterrestrial beings?
Okay.
And what if Afghanistan, for whatever reason, is somehow important to them?
Important how?
Maybe there's something there that they want, a resource, a location, I don't know, maybe something we can't even comprehend.
So the U.S. pulls out, leaving Afghanistan open for these extraterrestrial beings to access whatever it is they're after.
Right. And in exchange, the U.S. gets something in return. Advanced technology, knowledge, maybe even just information.
It's a cosmic quid pro quo.
Exactly. I know. It sounds crazy.
It does. But then you think about Bagram Air Base, the way it was abandoned so suddenly, so mysteriously.
Right. Like they were trying to hide something, or maybe even leave something behind for someone else to collect.
It definitely adds a whole other layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
It does. It gives me chills just thinking about it. But, let's be real. Whether we're talking about geopolitical maneuvering or alien encounters, the truth is we just don't know what happened.
We don't. The withdrawal, it's left us with more questions than answers.
It's exposed the limits of our understanding, It's shown us that even in this age of information, we can still be completely blindsided by events that they don't make sense.
It's a humbling thought.
It is, but it also underscores how important it is to be critical, to question everything, to not just accept the official story at face value.
Right. To look for those alternative perspectives, those pieces of the puzzle that don't quite fit.
Because the truth, whatever it is, it's out there somewhere.
It is. And the more we dig, the more we question, the closer we get to uncovering it.
We've covered a lot of ground today. Geopolitics, conspiracy theories, even a little bit of, alien talk.
It's been a wild ride.
It had. But there's one more thing we need to explore, and that's what all of this means for us, for you, for me, for everyone listening.
Right, the human element.
Exactly. How do we process all of this? How do we make sense of it? How do we find hope in a world that sometimes feels like it's, well, like it's spinning out of control?
Good question.
They are, and we're going to tackle them head on in the final part of this deep dive.
Can't wait.
Stay with us. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've gone deep, haven't we? Global reset, secret deals, even, ventured into the UFO territory.
We've covered a lot of ground. Yeah, some of it pretty far out there.
It has been, and, it's a lot to process, all these theories, these possibilities. So in this final part, I really want to kind of bring it back down to earth.
Ground ourselves a bit.
Exactly, because ultimately, all of this, it affects us. It affects how we see the world, how we think about the future.
It does. It's easy to get lost in all the geopolitics and the what ifs.
Right.
But we have to remember that these events, these theories, they have real world consequences.
They do. And I think, one of the biggest things I've been thinking about is the psychological impact of all this.
Oh, yeah. The mind games.
Yeah. Like, imagine for a second, just imagine that one of these theories is true. The global reset, the secret deal, even the UFO thing.
It's a pretty unsettling thought.
It is. Because what does that say about, the world we live in? Who's really in control?
Well, for a lot of people, I think it would be like a confirmation of their worst fears,
Right.
That the world is run by these shadowy figures, that the truth is always hidden, and that we're all just pawns in some big game.
It's like that scene in The Matrix,
Oh, yeah.
where Neo takes the red pill and suddenly he sees the world for what it really is.
Yeah, that illusion gets shattered.
And it's scary because it makes you feel like you have no control, like you're being manipulated.
Absolutely. And that feeling of powerlessness, it could be really, really damaging.
It can. So how do we deal with that? How do we avoid falling into that trap of despair and cynicism?
Well, I think it starts with knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yeah. The more we understand about the world, about the forces at play, the better equipped we are to navigate it all.
So you're saying, like, do your own research, educate yourself.
Exactly. Read, listen, talk to people, challenge your own assumptions.
But what about those people who say, it's all too complicated, or what's the point? They're always going to be one step ahead.
That's a dangerous way to think.
Yeah.
It's exactly what they want, for us to just give up, to become apathetic.
To just tune out.
Yeah. But the truth is, even small acts of individual agency, they can make a difference.
So, like, what kind of small acts are we talking about?
I mean, it could be as simple as, staying informed.
Right.
Reading different perspectives, talking to people who have different views than you.
Having those uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. It's about being an active participant, not just a passive consumer.
Okay, so active participation, but how does that actually translate into making a difference in the real world?
Well, it could be, voting.
Right.
Getting involved in your community, supporting organizations that are doing work that you believe in.
So you're saying, like, even if you feel small, even if you feel powerless, there are still things you can do.
Absolutely. Every little bit counts.
Okay. That's kind of empowering.
It is. It's about taking back control, even if it's just in your own little corner of the world.
And I think that's a really important message, especially after everything we've talked about.
It is. It's easy to get overwhelmed, to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
But we can't give in to that. We have to keep fighting, keep questioning, keep pushing for a better future.
We do. We've explored some dark corners in this deep dive, some really unsettling possibilities.
We have.
But I think, ultimately, there's still reason for hope.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that we're even having this conversation, that's a good sign.
It is. It means people are thinking, they're questioning, they're not just blindly accepting what they're told.
That's what it's all about.
It is. So to everyone listening, I want to say thank you for joining us on this journey. We've gone deep, we've explored the unknown, and we've hopefully come out of it with more questions than answers, but also with a renewed sense of purpose.
I hope so.
A sense that even in the face of uncertainty, even when things feel like they're falling apart, we still have the power to make a difference.
We do. We have the power to choose how we respond, how we move forward.
We do. So keep questioning, keep learning, and most importantly, keep the conversation going. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.